Hey everyone, welcome to a new video, welcome to my channel. My name is Micah and this video is going to be all about some new eyeshadow palette releases and whether I will be buying them or whether they are wishlist material, etc, etc. I last did this kind of video in January, so it's been a while, and it was almost like I did that video and then all of a sudden all of the new releases were being announced. So I was like, I should have done it perhaps a little bit later, but some of the eyeshadow palettes that I will be mentioning in this video have perhaps already been released, but I haven't talked about them yet on this channel. I have 20 different eyeshadow palettes for you to talk about, so let's just get to it because this is going to be a long one. So the first two palettes I'd like to mention, because they are by the same brand, and they are by Melt Cosmetics, and they have come out with some new stacks, or they are about to come out with a new stack. So Melt came out with the Blueprint stack, I think in January, and they're about to release, as I'm filming this video, but it may have been released already by the time this video goes up, but they've also come out with the new Shapeshift stack, and both of these look really nice to me. The Blueprint one I will tackle first. It's an all blue palette, and while I like the concept of having these like split pans that they're doing, I do feel that for a blue eyeshadow palette, I think that the neutrals in here are a bit superfluous, so it's not ticking all of the boxes for me. I do think it's very pretty. It's something that I'm sort of keeping in the back of my head. It's not like, ooh, I need to get this, or ooh, this needs to go onto my wish list, but if I am going to be ordering from Melt and it happens to be in stock, this may be something that I do want to pick up. The Shapeshift stack is one that I'm a little bit more excited for because this one is absolutely awesome. It looks to be like duochrome, sort of like shifting eyeshadows, 4 of them in total, and one of them is like this bluish teal shade that has my name written all over it, which is why I'm saying if I'm going to be ordering from Melt, I might as well just throw in another stack to begin with, and this will probably be that order. So the Melt Shapeshift stack is definitely going to go on the wish list, but I think I will be waiting a little bit before I buy that. I'm not really someone who like jumps on to the bandwagon when something is released. I usually wait a couple of months before, like until the hype dies down, and then I go like, okay, now I want to try it. Then a palette that you can now pre-order, I think it's going to be shipped from April onwards, is the Certify Affinity 2 palette. So everybody's suddenly doing blue and greens. What happened? I went into 2019 thinking, I want to try more purple, blue, and green eyeshadow. And what is happening? Almost every single brand is coming out with an all blue or an all green or an all purple palette. What's going on? So the Certify Affinity 2 palette is one that looks very interesting. However, I just recently got the Tropical Wonders palette by them. So I first want to try and see if I like the quality of that. And if I'm absolutely raving about that, then I might want to get into buying Affinity 2. The other palettes that they have don't really speak to me. This one does, but I first want to try their formula before I decide whether I want to get anything else. So then we're moving on to a brand that just seems to churn out their releases, and of course I'm talking about no other than Colourpop. Ever since I did my last video, they did an all pink palette towards the end of 2018. They've since come out with an all purple and an all green palette. The all purple one is the It's My Pleasure palette. I'm just looking at the pictures that I have here on my computer in case you're wondering what's going on here. And I do have to say that it is definitely a palette that appeals to me. I like all purples. But I also bought the Huda Beauty Amethyst Obsessions palette towards the end of 2019. So that kind of like ticks my all purple box. So I don't really need this, I feel. Plus, there is quite a bit of overlap with some of the Colourpop singles that I ordered at the beginning of the year. So I showed those in a video. Then we have Just My Luck, which is the all green palette that they released for St. Patrick's Day, it seems. And that is definitely up my alley. That is one that, again, looks really, really stunning. But again, same as with the purple palette, too much overlap with some of the singles that I bought at the beginning of the year. So I just don't think that I will be picking this up because by the time I get around to placing another Colourpop order, we will be months down the line and they will have released, I don't know, like another 20 palettes or something by that time. So I might want to get something a little bit more recent, but with Colourpop, I tend to be quite picky what I do and what I don't pick up because they just release too much. Last but not least, by Colourpop, they have just released, I think it's already out, the Sweet Talk palette. It's part of their spring collection, and that seems to be all peachy and warm tones. It looks very pretty, very soft, very sort of romantic almost, very spring-like, very pretty, but again, not something that really truly appeals to me. With Colourpop, I just really think that a lot of what they do is very samey as well. Like some of the different palettes actually look quite identical if you start comparing them shade for shade, so I think that that's a bit of a shame. And they tend to discontinue things like this as well. They release everything super quickly, but they also discontinue things quite quickly too. So again, the Sweet Talk palette isn't really high on the wish list. Another brand that you can mention when it comes to just over-releasing and just like, oh, what should I buy, is Too Faced. And Too Faced has come out, I think, already with the Pretty Mess palette. The minute I saw this, I knew, nope, that is one I'm not going to get. The arrangement of the shades in the palette seems very arbitrary and random. And this is just one of those releases, and Too Faced seems to have those from time to time where some of their releases are like, woo, wow, yay, yeah, everybody wants to get them. And then some of their releases is like, it's crickets, and no one talks about them. And I believe this Pretty Mess collab is like a collab with a reality TV star. I don't watch reality TV, so I don't know. So it completely doesn't appeal to me. It's that I follow Trend Mood and saw it on there and it was like, hey, Too Faced has a new palette out, but that's about it. And then another palette that Too Faced is releasing, but I think it isn't out yet. I think they are supposed to be releasing this in the springtime, so later in the spring, in May, I think, is the Natural Lust palette, which seems to be a continuation of their Natural Love palette that they released a couple of years ago. This is just too big for my tastes. If you know me, then you know I, for instance, don't own any of the larger Morphe palettes because 35 shades, I just get lost and I no longer know what I want to do with a palette. I prefer like 9 to 12 pans max, and then I sort of still have an overview of what I would like to do with that palette. The Natural Lust palette, it looks pretty, but it looks a bit basic. Like for the first 2 columns just kind of look like your standard very pale neutrals that you have in every single palette. And it has a few interesting pops. It has like a violet purpley shade and like some blues it seems to have as well, but this isn't high on the wish list. I think one of the releases for the springtime is the new Anastasia Beverly Hills Riviera palette, and this isn't just on my wish list. I already ordered it. It's currently making its way to my doorstep. So by the time I'm filming this video, I've just ordered it, so it's not here yet. So I can't say anything regarding quality, but the minute I saw those bright poppy colors, I was like, yep, that is one I have to get. So the ABH Riviera palette isn't just on a wish list. I've already bought it. Another new palette by Violet Voss that I would like to talk to you about is the Sugar Crystals palette. This looks cute, but it's a rainbow palette, and I now have like 5 rainbow palettes, so I really don't need one. So this is just one of those things that I'm like, yeah, it looks cute, but it doesn't really add anything to my collection that I don't already own. So that's why that is not going to go on the wish list. Then a brand that I hear some people talking about from time to time is Beauty Bakery, but it's a brand that I haven't really tried anything from yet myself. And they're coming out with a palette, or they have already come out with a palette. This may already have been released. The proof is in the pudding eyeshadow palette. And I think that the idea of all of this like food related makeup is super cute, and I really like the idea behind it, but I think it can also get a little bit gimmicky. And if I look at this palette, it's a bunch of browns and neutrals, and your girl has pretty much all the neutrals that she could possibly want in a lifetime. So in terms of neutrals, I definitely want to see something a little bit differently, and this doesn't really seem to be adding anything new to my collection, so this is one that I will be passing up on. A more indie brand palette that has been getting a little bit of hype the past couple of weeks is the OPV Spotlight palette, and that is one that when I looked at it, I was like, ooh, that looks really, really interesting, and I've already seen some people who've done looks with it and reviews, and it looks really, really cool. It just reminds me a lot of the Urban Decay Born to Run palette, which I already own. So again, is this really a palette that adds anything new to my collection? I don't think it will. This is one that perhaps if I were able to spot it in real life and I start swatching it and I'm amazed by the quality, it might get into wishlist material, but I believe this is an online only brand, and so far the color scheme looks interesting enough, but this isn't one that's like top of the list. Maybe if nothing else more interesting comes around, I may pick this up in the future, but it's not one that's currently really interesting me. BH is also coming out with another new palette. Again, one of those brands that just keeps the releases rolling. I've never tried BH. I just placed an order for their Royal Affair palette. It was on sale on Beauty Bay. So instead of 16 euros, it was now 11 euros. And BH is a brand that I definitely want to try. So I first want to see how I get on with the Royal Affair palette before I look into anything else by the brand. The Opalescent palette, pale neutrals, yay! It does look a little bit more pastel, which makes it a little bit more interesting to me, but again, I feel like these kind of shades I already have in other palettes. It reminds me quite a bit of the Nabla Soul Blooming palette that I bought last fall, so I think I can get similar looks with the Nabla palette compared to what is going on here. And since all of the shades seem to be variations on a certain undertone, I think that this is also the kind of palette that could very easily look very samey on the eye and that you don't get a lot of distinct looks out of it. So that's why I'm going to be passing up on the BH Cosmetics Opalescent palette. An eyeshadow palette that's been getting quite a bit of hype again is by Makeup Forever. Makeup Forever is one of those brands that doesn't do a whole lot of palettes, so I feel that whenever they do a palette, everybody's going gaga for it. And their new palette is called Let's Gold, and it looks really stunning. I think if you're a lover of gold eyeshadow, this is going to be your jam. I'm not a big fan of gold eyeshadow, number one, and number two, I'm not a big fan of Makeup Forever eyeshadows. I tried a palette by them in the past and I never reached for it. I thought the formula was a bit dry. They were very pigmented, they were very easy to blend, but I just also felt that they were a little bit dry and difficult to work with as well. So the Makeup Revolution formula is just not my favorite, which is why I'm a little bit apprehensive about trying any of their other palettes. Colored Rain is one of the brands that I'm very interested in. They seem to have some really stunning eyeshadows. I have a couple of their singles now, and again, Beauty Bay had an offer for their Queen of Hearts palette, so I decided to buy that. It was on my wish list, and I finally got my hands on it, so that's making its way over. And when I've had a bit more of a play around, I definitely, if I really like it, I might want to try more Colored Rain eyeshadows. They have come out with a new palette called the Safari Rain palette, but it's neutrals. And it just, again, I look at that and go like, neutrals with a pop of teal, which I already own. So this is not a palette that's very high on my wish list because it seems to be something that I already have, and that is why I will be passing up on this one. Tarte is coming out with a new palette as well. I think it's part of their spring collection, so this may be out right now. And it's the High Times and Good Times. High Tides and Good Times. Try saying that 10 times fast. Eyeshadow palette, and it seems to have a really interesting concept with these glitters in the middle and then a bunch of like neutrals and also some pops of color. So Tarte is definitely listening to people saying, you're boring, you need to come up with some colors. This looks to be super duper stunning. It's just that Tarte, not available in Europe. There is no way I can get my hands on Tarte. I think even their general like official website doesn't even ship to Europe, so it's a bit of a bummer because I would be interested in this, but this is again one, especially with those glitter shades, I would like to feel those first before committing to buy something like this. That's one of my pet peeves, for instance, in the Huda Beauty palettes, where you have those like grainy pressed glitters in every single palette, and I'm like, I know I will not use that often enough to really warrant purchasing a palette where there's like tons of those shades in there, which is why I only bought the Desert Dust, because it only has one of them. But in here you get 4 of these super high shimmer shades, so unless they are a really nice, easy to work with formula, I would be interested in this, but if I can't try it, I will never know. So that's why this Tarte palette is not going to be on my wish list for the simple fact that I can't get it, but also because I can't try it. The next palette I want to talk about is Kat Von D's vegan palette. Kat Von D, who? That seems to be the case with the Kat Von D brand right now. I spotted her Lolita palette when I was in London. It looked a little bland. I already have the Marvelous Mauves palette by Dose of Color, so that covers all of my mauve needs, you could say. The vegan palette, I have no interest in this at all. Not only because it's Kat Von D, but just because it's like, I have no reason for wanting this whatsoever. A palette that very much intrigues me and that I think is wishlist material is about to be released when this video goes up, and that is the Jeffree Star Blue Blood palette. Now, Jeffree Star, like Kat Von D, is a bit controversial. And I very much have been looking into different products from his brand. The Androgyny palette is one that really appeals to me. His highlighters look stunning. Those liquid lipsticks really speak to me. It's just, I'm never taking the plunge because some of his viewpoints and him as a person, I don't really go for. And that has been putting me off of buying things. However, we can now get the brand here in the Netherlands, which has given me the opportunity to swatch some things and to look into things and feel the textures. And I have to see that the quality is grade A, and that is starting to sway me to buy something. The Blue Blood palette, I think that if I had to pick a blue palette, I think I would go for the Jeffree Star over the Melt Cosmetics Blueprint stack. I think. Because there are simply more blues, and there are simply some interesting shades that sort of make the entire palette just work together very well. I'm just very curious whether we will actually get the palette the day it releases worldwide, or whether we need to wait like 3 months like we sometimes have with Urban Decay stuff. But it's definitely a palette that I first want to see in real life, and I know I can, and when I do, I will decide whether I want to get it or not. Natasha has come out with a new palette as well, the Biba palette, I think that's how you say it. It's all neutral. I don't need this. Natasha does not make my favorite eyeshadow palette formula, and that is why I'm not going to be splurging $129 on a neutral palette with shades that I have a million times over in my collection. And then, last but not least, the final palette I would like to talk to you about is by Parakeet, and it's the Come As You Are eyeshadow palette. Parakeet is now currently for sale via Beauty Bay, so this is a brand I could potentially get. It usually takes a while for new releases, however, to be put on the Beauty Bay website. Same goes for Melt, same goes for, well, every big brand that's stocked on there, it seems. And the Come As You Are palette looks really nice and grungy. This is a color scheme that I feel has neutrals, but it also has some fun pops of color. So when I see this around, then I might want to actually put this on my wish list and get it. So yeah, overall, out of these 20 palettes, there is one that I bought, 2 that go onto the wish list for sure, and then like maybe 2 or 3 potentials, but there's like the majority of these I know I won't be buying. So I think that that's a healthy way of managing things. Let me know in a comment down below what eyeshadow palettes you are looking forward to being released or that you have bought in the past. I would love to know. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to see more videos by me, or maybe you're new here, then you could of course subscribe if you would like to. You don't have to, but if you would like to join my little family on here, I would very much appreciate that. You can do so by clicking that red notification button down below. And yeah, without further ado, this is the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Hope to see you in my next video. Bye!